Kia ora, welcome back again. We're here with another reaction to Mr. Phil Campion, former 22 SAS operator. I've just found and been going through after being sent his other video, the little mini-series that he's done on the British selection. So we're into number 2, so that's a good thing. The Aptitude, the Hills with Phil Campion. So let's jump on in. Let's get to the play button.
Today, we're going to talk about the Hills phase. The Hills phase of selection, which is also known as, to the DS, the directing staff, as aptitude. All right? Aptitude means you're either good enough to continue or you're not. All right? That's the bottom line. Nobody throughout this period of selection is really going to pay much attention to you. They don't care if you're this, that, or the other. They couldn't care what cat badge you are. They just want to know that at the end of this, you've got the aptitude to be able to get from A to B. Okay? It's as simple as that. Nobody is looking at you as a soldier at this stage of the campaign. Nobody wants to know, do you know this? Do you know that? Do you know the other? Have you got a mate in that, a mate in that? No one cares, all right? All they want to know is, can we put a large pack on your back, and have you got the arduous capability to be able to get from A to B? That's it, Buster. Right. So let's talk about how my Hills phase went and how I felt and all that sort of stuff. So Hills phase. I'm going to say now, when you drive down to Brecon and you're going to join the course, there is a little bit of anticipation inside you, butterflies, that sort of stuff. You're a bit nervous, honestly. You're thinking to yourself, this is now. I'm entering a new world here, and this is like, this is for me personally. It was a dream to be doing this. So, I was fully committed before I went, but driving down there, you're thinking to yourself, this is going to be tough, and you know what's coming. You know that you've got umpteen months worth of absolute beastings, and you're on day one. Do you know what I mean? You've not.
I love hearing him speak about this, about how he was feeling. Because it brings back some memories for me on the NZ one and also the Australian one. Like, I didn't really know what I was getting into. All I knew was we were going to get thrashed for a few days on the selection, and if we were lucky enough to pass selection and hopefully get selected to go on the cycle, then you're going to get thrashed some more for the next 8 to 9 to 10 months of training and the courses. But hearing him speak about, I suppose, maybe some anxiety. He was excited and fully committed, which I've just, sidetracked. I just seen his T-shirt, 0 FKSs given. Anyway, was I talking about that he was feeling, that he was fully committed, but starting to think, man, he's in it now. He's about to do this for real. Yeah, they're the same sort of feelings, I think, regardless of who you are. There's a level of anticipation, anxiety, excitement. I don't know about fear. I don't recall having any fear at that stage. If I did have any fear, it wasn't about the course. It was fear of failing. It was fear of failing and letting my battalion down, letting the unit down, who I felt I was representing. What was also interesting, just in this first less than 2 minutes that he's been speaking about, is how he mentions nobody's looking at you from a soldier perspective or worried about what cap badge you have or what unit you come from, etc. That's interesting. He's saying that they just want to make sure that they can put a heavy load on your back and that you have the physical and mental ability to get from point A to point B within the time frame that you're given. So that's interesting. I'm sure there must still be an element of your sense and bearing and your awareness as a soldier. I would expect there has to be how you carry your weapon, how you're not necessarily patrolling, but how you present when you get to the stands, like that you're not looking like a sack of, or a soup sandwich, the Americans would say on their buds, Navy SEALs, or you're not looking like a sack of SHIT when you rock up at each checkpoint. But anyway, let's carry on.
Not stepped a foot on the ground. So you got that at the back of your mind straight away. You also know that you're going to be under intense scrutiny from day one to, a year into being in the Sabre squadron, really. You're going to be in intense scrutiny and probably scrutiny for the rest of your life, to be honest. You know what I mean? So there you go. Welcome to the world of SF. Anyway, that said, we drove down there. I drove down there on my own in the end because a friend was going to come with me, but he didn't. I got there. And I remember getting there on day one, and it was like you had a time slot to get there between sort of like 12 and 4 in the afternoon or something like that. I think it was a Sunday. I can't be 100% sure. I can't remember, to be honest. But we had a time slot to get. And obviously people are sort of like, you don't want to be the first one through the door, do you? Do you know what I mean? You don't want to be Mr. Uber Keen. You don't want to be the first one there, but you don't want to be the last one either, or the one that pushes it slightly 5 minutes to the right. Do you know what I mean? Because you're going to be already standing out. You're going to be beacon. And the aim of the hills really is to get through and be the grey man. At the end of the hills, if they don't really know your name or know who you are, you've done a good job, all right? So like I say, turning up sort of like midway through the afternoon and blending in with everybody else, that's a good thing. That's a winner's approach, right? So I got down there for about 1:30 in the afternoon, I think. I got there, and I remember it was already been a hive of activity, and people are sort of like signing in. You go to a reception desk, you sign in there, they've got your name, then you get sent to another desk, you get this, you get that. You got a little few pieces of kit to get out from the store, and there's a bit of admin to be done. And you're told where your room's going to be, where you're bunking, who you're bunking, all that sort of stuff. So all that sort of stuff is going on. And all afternoon for me, I think it's just a bit of a blur, to be honest. You were sort of like, you were running around, you were doing this, you were doing that. At this stage, you don't know who's who either, because all the staff are in sort of like tracksuits and that. So mind your P's and Q's is what I'm going to say, because you could be speaking to anybody, and you should have that attitude. Anybody, you shouldn't be just behaving because the DS are about. You should be treating everybody the same. That should be part of your repertoire before you get there anyway. And it's certainly something they'll be looking at. If you're running around, and giving it to everybody, then that's probably not the most sensible thing to be doing. But I was moving around. Got me accommodation, started to unpack my kit a little bit. At this stage, I thought, well, I'm not going to unpack everything because I don't know how long I'm going to be here for, and that really is the case. So I'd made my bed, I'd put my mattress cover on, I'd made me bed down and all that sort of stuff, got a few bits and pieces there. And then I went and sat up the naffy, and I remember the naffy was absolutely horrendous. There was probably 300 plus blokes who'd got in that afternoon. You're now anticipating the next day's activity.
The naffy. I remember, I don't know if that's what it is, but we had on-call training. It's the only time I ever heard the term naffy. We had a naffy out at West Mountain down in Christchurch, which basically was just like a little shop. You could buy some junk food, basically. Chocolate bars, sweets, lollies, whatever. So I don't know what the naffy is here, whether that's the mess hall where they eat or whether it's a shop or what. So naffy.
Activities, which was some briefings to start off with, but you're in the naffy that night and there's all sorts going on. There's retreads, there's blokes that have been before, they're in the naffy. You've got guys who've never been there, you've got guys from across the board, loads of paratroopers, you've got people from corps, we had a submariner on our course, you know what I mean? You've got people from all different realms, all different walks of life, all in the naffy. Some people in there gobbing off. I remember there's a bloke.
Okay, so clearly the naffy is not a shop or a place where you buy stuff. It must be some sort of hall, I'm guessing. So I'm guessing what he's talking about is where he's seen for the first time maybe all these different people from different parts of the Defence Force, a submariner. So, and that's the selection courses are open to all arms, so to all corps. So whether you're Army, Navy, Air Force, you can apply. And here in New Zealand and Australia, there is a direct entry route for those coming from Civvy Street as well. So he's seen all of these. It's funny, I heard him just say he's seen or heard a person gobbing off somebody talking smack, or clearly somebody's got either high aspirations or a big personality, or maybe they're just situationally unaware of how they're coming across.
I nicknamed him in my mind as Maps. He was always pulling maps out and telling people where they were going the next day. I thought, how do you know that? Do you know what I mean? You don't know nothing, son, do you? Anyway, there's all this activity going on in the naffy, and I remember walking in there, sticking me around the door. I had a quick cup of tea, and I thought, that's not for me. That ain't for me. I'm going back to the block club, do you know what I mean? But I couldn't settle in the block, so eventually I sort of like had a wander around camp and then went back to bed and got in my bed and slept. And that was my first day there. And I remember the next day we got up and you were straight into briefing. So, breakfast was early in the morning. I remember having a full English, as I did every day when I was on the hills phase. Just full English with as much food as I could get into my stomach.
So this is interesting. Yeah, I asked this on the I think on the first one that I did, where he's talking about the pre-selection and scoffing and eating, and that he ate and ate, and now he's talking about it, a full English breakfast. I'm not sure what a full English is, but clearly it's more than what we got on the New Zealand selection. I don't think that was a full English breakfast. And excuse me. And the fact that he's able to eat or put away as much food as he can, or as he could, to use his words, before he went out on the hills, there must be. So you rock up, you're given a timing, you make sure you're there between that timing or before that timing. He's got all his stuff sorted. He crashed out. He's clearly been given instructions for the next day, so he's rocked up. He's having breakfast, so he's getting to eat what he wants by the sounds of things, and as much as he wants, before he heads off what I presume will be for the first part, or the first day of the hills phase.
I started every day the same, by pushing as much food down my clacker as I possibly could. All right, so literally, you know, I've done the whole thing. You know, my breakfast had Olympic in the title every day. All right, so I did that, had my breakfast. Went to my first lecture. The first lecture was on the regimental ethos. Okay, I'm not going to go through the regimental ethos now, but it's something which has stayed with me throughout my career. And obviously today I still talk about the regimental ethos, and I teach it to cadets even now. So that day one's lessons will stay with me and have stayed with me for the rest of my life. We did some basic navigation. We learnt about this. We learnt about that. We got given a do's and don'ts lecture. You do get a do's and don'ts lecture, don't you? When you're in the army, you get do this and don't do that, and you get a do's and don'ts, and that's how it is. And that's no different to any course you would ever go on in the military. On day one, you know, route one, you're going to get a do's and don'ts lecture, and selection is no different. Do you know what I mean? Do this, don't do that. That's it, bust, all right? And at the end of it, it's in black and white, isn't it? So if you break the rules, you can expect a tap on the shoulder and be sent back home. That's the way it is, isn't it? So there was that. And then in the afternoon, we did a BFT. I'll call that a big fat twat, but it's the basic fitness test. And it was literally a mile and a half out squatted. We went up to Selly Bridge. For those that know Selly Bridge, you drive up the hill just after the cattle grid in the lay-by there. We got out of the trucks. We formed up in a squad. Boom, went straight into a BFT. We ran for a mile and a half in one direction as a squad. We ran as quick as you could back on your own. And, you know, you had to be in front of... Two people failed my BFT when I was on selection. Failed it. Absolutely, completely, that's it, not there. Failed. Unbelievable. How did you get there? How did you fail that? Do you know what I mean? How did you even get on selection in the first place? But
that's an interesting point. And what I love about the Australian selection, I don't know if New Zealand does it now, but the Australian selection had it, and I believe they still do it now, Special Forces entry test, or the SFET. You have to be able to show that you can pass that first before you even given a look at or a look-in to go on the actual SAS selection course. And that's a great step that they have included in their process to make it into, or to get onto the selection course. For all those other things that Big Phil spoke about in the first video, there's lots of work that happens admin logistically for each candidate that gets put on. And to come there and fail on day one of an activity or a task is just, that's rubbish. So you've just wasted everybody's time. You've wasted your own time. You've wasted everybody else's time. Well, that individual, if that's how they're rocking up, they may not feel like they're wasting their time, and they may not even care that they're wasting other people's time. But it's a strain and a load and a waste of effort that people shouldn't have to put up with or deal with because somebody's been too lazy to put in the work. So it's great that there's those initial tests that happen to determine whether or not you are suitable to get to the start line in the first place. But hearing Big Phil talk about two guys failing the BFT, basic fitness test, I think is what he called it, or big fat twat, just shows how poor. Maybe they were one of those people that he spoke about in his other video that just wanted to have attempted Special Forces selection or something. That's rubbish.
There you go, they failed. They were obviously going to be going home that day. Not a good look, I can tell you, not a good look. So the remainder of that week then, you do some classroom stuff. You're still learning about the hills. You do some squatted runs. You do this thing called Dicky Bow Wood, where you go running around this Dicky Bow Wood. Oh, absolutely honking, all right, just running round and round and round. And you're pretty much as a squad until the end of the first week, which is when they do the fan dance, right? The fan dance probably claims as many lives as anybody, as anything on selection. You know, people are throwing the towel in left, right, and centre on the fan dance. The way it's done, then you turn up at Story Arms. You get out of the trucks, you get your kit weighed. That's you passed that. If you still stood there at the end of that, you're formed up into three ranks. You're given a time slot. You start going up the hill, and I remember we were messing about getting over the gate, and someone said they're already going. And I remember looking up the hill. My DS was already halfway up it, and I'm like, and you've got to stay with the DS, all right? You've got to stay with the DS all the way across. So you go up the fan from the phone box, okay, past the wood line, down the dip, up again, up onto the fan, round the bottom of Corndew. All right, Corndew is the tabletop. Round the sheep track, round there, Windy Gap.
That's interesting. On their selection, is there a staff with all the gear on and you got to keep up with them? I don't know. But listening to him, that's what it sounds like. Or is it a staff that's in clean skin, or maybe they're just wearing webbing and a light backpack and you've got to keep up with them? That'll be, either way, it'll be terrible, I would imagine, because those operators, those guys are used to stomping and used to moving quickly with a lot of weight on their back. They may not look like they're moving quick, but when you've got the weight on your back and you're trying to keep up, you feel it. So that's interesting that they've got staff that do that. We didn't have that in Australia or NZ. You're not trying to keep up with any staff. You're on your own, and you're navigating to the checkpoints. So let's see.
All that sort of stuff, okay? Up to the fan, down to Jacob's Ladder, down Jacob's Ladder. Now, by the time I got to Jacob's Ladder, my DS was already on the Roman Road going way out towards Torpan Toe, right? I'm thinking, how am I ever going to catch him? But keep going. That got to a few people because they're not just looking at him how far Fred is. They know that they've got to come back up Jacob's Ladder. When you look at Jacob's Ladder, it looks horrendous. It's hideous. And you're thinking to yourself, so a couple of guys gave up there. All right, they disappeared and went back down the hill. I kept going. I got to the turnaround point at Torpan Toe. Got my water bottle out, got the water. I'd already seen the DS going the other way, so I know. But they stop you at Torpanto. They make you drink your water. There you go. Stop. Where's your water, son? There you go. Get it out, drink it. Little bit of jiggery poke.
That's that's cool. That'll play a lot. It's interesting hearing him speak about the selection, because there would be a lot there. As I was listening to him, there would be so much playing on your mind, looking at how far ahead the DS is. I'm supposed to keep up with them. I'm way behind. They're now turning around and heading back. He's there. They've been made to stop. The other staff there make the candidate stop, is what I'm hearing him say. And you've got to get some water and some fluids in before they let you go. That's all of that's playing on your mind. I wonder if the staff are like, because I assume they're already badged operators. I wonder if they're running, trying to, make as many fail as they can, or what the story is. I don't know. I'm sure Phil's going to talk about it, but this is interesting. I'm thinking, with that much, do the staff leave with a head start, or can they all leave at the same time? Are they literally just following the staff, or are they supposed to be navigating at this stage? I don't know. Sounds terrible though, but also exciting and cool at the same time.
Ogre putting it away. They won't let you go until you put it away, and then off you go. So I had to run back down the track. By the time I got to Jacob's Ladder, I could not see my DS anywhere. So I know now that really got to a few people, because not only are you on Jacob's Ladder is ridiculously steep. Not only are you on that, you also know that you haven't got long to go to the end now, really, in relative terms. But you know that you need to be with the DS when you get there, and you can't even see him. So how are you going to catch him? So that really played. A lot of people failed at that stage. A lot of people sort of like threw the towel in. I just kept going. and kept going. Got up to the top of the fan, ran back down and round underneath Corndew, and sort of like back down towards the phone boxes. And it was only when we got around that last corner, as you turn onto the sort of like green bit off the track, that I saw the DS, and he'd actually slowed down a little bit, and people were starting to catch him up. And I was like, wow, okay. At that stage, I knew a lot of people had given up. Anyway.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That probably answers my question before. I'm guessing the staff could have just hoofed it and blasted all of them and made it so that nobody, or maybe one or two, or only a handful would be able to keep up with him on that. But to hear Phil talk about that he saw the DS, the staff, starting to slow down, I'm assuming, without having had the without having had the honour of being able to do the selection, because I didn't apply the British one. I'm assuming that DS, that directing staff, or the directing staff that do this part of the selection course, probably slowed down intentionally to let candidates that are still there, that are still in the fight, that haven't been so demoralised that they just quit because they give up and they look at how far ahead the staff is, that is likely slowed down to enable or to allow those that have just kept pushing, that have kept going, like what Phil has clearly done. That's awesome. I'm guessing there. I'm not saying that that's the case, but sounds like it.
That was the fan dance. Got down to the telephone box. I can tell you now, I was quite happy to see that telephone box. From there on in, then the next couple of weeks, you do the same sort of thing. Every day you go out, you go on a large march. But now you're on your own. Now you're going to get into the car park. You're going to get your kit weighed. The DS are going to come up to you. They're going to give you a grid.
Okay. Yeah. So that was just for the first day, and then the rest of this now, the navigation, they're on their own. They're going to do their own stuff. So that first day, there must be just a test to try to break down those candidates that think they want to be there, because that will play on your mind. I've got to move at this pace or very close to it every day on this course. So must be following the instructor or the badged member. And then now, Phil's saying, now they're on their own, or about to be on their own with the rest of the course.
They're going to ask if you know where you are. You're going to show them on the map with the tip of your compass or your pencil. There you go, I'm here. They're going to ask you if you know where you're going. You're going to go, yes, I'm going there. And then they're going to set you off. And every time you get to a checkpoint, you're going to get the same thing. Do you know where you are? Show me. Yes, bang, there I am. Do you know where you're going? Yes, show me. There you go. Off you go. Bang, off you go. All right, and that's it. And you keep doing that every day, and the weight of your Bergen will get heavier, and the length of the march will probably get longer, and you just keep going. Now, after that couple of weeks, you then go on to a thing called test week. Right now, test week every day is another march. You start.
That's interesting. So that probably explains why they're eating, having a full breakfast, and then the cutoff time at the end of the day, where time's their own, where they can eat and drink or whatever. From what I've heard, I don't know if that's the case, but that whole navigation period, 2-3 weeks, whatever he's up into now, and then there's a test week of it. So whether that's week 5 or week 6 or week 4 or wherever it is, that probably explains why they're able to eat. Because I don't know of anybody. Now I'm comparing this to the New Zealand one. When we're doing the 3 days of the open country navigation, which is days 2, 3, and 4, or it was when I did selection anyway, I can't see people being able to last much longer, let alone weeks or a month or 5 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever, however long this aptitude and navigation phase is, or hills phase is on the British one, with the no food and very little sleep, being kept awake at night till early hours in the morning, and then expected to report again by 5 o'clock the next morning, when you're probably not getting your head down until, if you're lucky, once you've deserviced and got all your kit sorted, maybe by 2 o'clock you might get your head down, 2:30, and then it feels like your head just touches a pillow, and then it's time to get back up again. I couldn't see that happening for weeks and weeks at a time. But again, hence why the British selection is the way it is. It's their own selection, and they've got their own process. So yeah, that's sort of starting to make sense how and why they're able to eat, because their hills phase and this navigation or I would take it as open country phase, goes for weeks or 5-6 weeks. Hence why their selection goes for 6 months. Yeah, this is cool. Thank you, Mr. Campion, for putting this stuff out. This is really starting to help me, at least anyway, connect the dots. Still very, very vague in comparison to what the actuals are, but it's helpful for me anyway to get a good idea.
Off in Elan Valley, which is extremely hard, because although it's not hilly, it's just those babies' heads. It's honking to walk on, right? So you do the babies' heads. The other thing that puts you off in this stage is, so So far on the course, it's just been people who are going for the SAS, for badged as 2-2. Now you get the TA turn up. So you got all these fresh legs in the field, TA, signallers, all these people that are going to be outs and debts around the SF world, who are all now there, fresh legs, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And I was in bobbins by then. You know, I had my toes were in bits, my back was in bits. I dislodged the retina. I was in absolute bits. And then all these fresh geezers turn up, and they're all running about and cutting about, and their kit's clean and tidy. And you're like, wow. It's just a little bit off-putting, to be honest, but there you go. They never put me off. And that culminates in a long march at the end, which is a long old day out. That's a 64k tab on your last day. That's gonna really test you. You don't get told what time you've got to do it in, but you know you've got around between 18 to 24 hours. I got myself in at about the 16-hour point on that. It was a long day. Again, the emphasis wasn't on navigation by this time, all right? So they set us all off roughly at around sort of like, although you was in groups, you got set off in groups at the same time.
Wow.
And you just made your way up the hill and you just slogged it all day.
I'm assuming they get sent off in groups because clearly they're probably a much larger, they have more applicants coming onto their courses, I'm imagining. I don't know. And the NZ one, the 60 clicker at the end, you leave individually, you're done, you go on your own. I'm assuming they're probably still not allowed to talk to each other. So even if they're leaving in a group, they're probably still not allowed to communicate or talk to each other. It's just all on you. But this test week after all of that, and then hearing them talk about the fresh legs coming in, the TAs coming in, all these fresh-legged geezers. I think I heard him say he thinged a retina on his eye. His back was in bits, and you clearly after a few weeks of the hills and doing all that stuff, your body would be feeling it. And if you haven't prepared well, you may even start to seize up as you're going along if you haven't prepared well enough prior to. Crazy.
You just slogged it all day, all the way. You visited all the sites, the top of the fan, 264, VW Valley, backwards and forwards, all that sort of stuff. And again, every time you got to a checkpoint, do you know where you are? Yes. Do you know where you're going? Yes. Off you go. See you later. Bang. Off you go. Do you know what I mean? So at the end of that day, you got back to the 4 tonner. You hadn't been told then if you'd passed or failed. You literally just got right on the truck, waited till the truck was full, went back to the camp. When you got back to the camp, that night, throughout the night, people were being woken up, tap on the shoulder. There you go, son, you failed. There you go, son, you've passed. Whatever. Okay. So by the next morning, some of the people were going to Hereford, some of the people were going home. And that was the deal. That was the hills. That was it, over. That was the sort of like, wow. All that anticipation, all that like worry, all that thing. At the end of that, you were under no illusions. You're either going home or you're not. And luckily, I say luckily, well, the hard work was a little bit of luck, but I was still on the course and I was still going. I'll tell you what I'll do. Next series then, I'll tell you all about the preparation for and my trip to the jungle, which for me is selection proper.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. Clearly he's finished that phase, the hills phase, but man, lots to digest there. This is gold for anybody that's looking at going on the 22 SA selection, I would imagine, because not a lot has likely changed in terms of the process and the structure. And why I say that is because it's been tried, tested, and proven. It works. And if it ain't broke, why try to fix it? So they're going to likely continue to utilize that same formula to identify the operators or the people that they feel will be a good fit, like Mr. Campion or like the Campions of the world, like the Des Powells of the world from Bravo 30. For those that haven't seen or don't know of Des, I had the privilege to work with him in the private security sector, but he's got an interesting life as well. Older gentleman now these days. He was older when I was working with him in the private security sector, but sharp as and a good man. So really great insights to the process and breaking it down, giving these stage by stage. And I do think clearly, well, not clearly, but I would imagine that Mr. Campion is likely not spilling the beans on every minor detail, which, I don't think anybody would expect them to. There's still, you want to have a bit of mystery in reserve in terms of what happens on the day-to-day. There'll be other little things that no doubt the instructors and that will do on the selection courses, and that's how it should be. I think it maintains a level of, I suppose, uncertainty and apprehension for the course. I think those that go in thinking that, oh yeah, I've seen this series, or I know what's happening on the New Zealand or the Australian selection because I've seen the documentaries, that I'll be good to go. I think they'll be in for a nice surprise or a rude awakening when they get on there and then they realise, oh man, I didn't see this on the videos that we saw on YouTube or anything like that. So that's a piece that you still want to have up here, understanding that not everything you're seeing on these YouTube videos explains or divulges all the information about every aspect of the selection, and things will change from time to time. Like the New Zealand one as an example, I did the dunes, the video, the first among equals, they did the swamp. There's those things that you don't want to go and preparing for the dunes and then you get thrown in the swamp and you quit, or vice versa. You want to get yourself squared away and sorted, prepared as well as you can before going on selection, by preparing physically and mentally, understanding what it is that you're signing up for. So yeah, this is cool. The jungle phase, or the bush, the selection proper, as Mr. Campion puts it. So look forward to jumping into that. Thanks very much for tuning in. Whatever it is that you may be going through, challenges, struggles, trials, keep turning up, keep smashing, stay in the fight. If you're preparing for selection, all the best to you. Understand and put in the work and use as much of the information as you can if it's helpful for you. In my time and in Mr. Campion's time, there was none of this sort of information available to help give insights and points into the selection course itself. It really largely depended on if you knew somebody and if they were willing to sit down and speak with you about it. So now there's a lot more access to information. But hopefully this helps. Hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. And until the next video, we'll see you next time.